Hello and welcome to The Tonight Show.
Coming up in just a few moments, do people who turn down 2 social housing offers deserve to be banned from reapplying for 5 years? This measure is expected to be introduced shortly, and People Before Profit TD Gino Kenny on why he branded the Taoiseach disrespectful over this exchange.
I'm sorry, Deputy. The reply can't be any different to what 7 minutes ago.
Also tonight, the government has launched its climate action plan, but is it too little, too late? As the Taoiseach suffers a blow to his personal approval ratings, and support for Fine Gael has also fallen. On our panel tonight, it's broadcaster Eamon Dunphy, Fine Gael TD Fergus O'Dowd, People Before Profit TD Gino Kenny, journalist Larissa Nolan, and Fianna Fáil Senator Lorraine Clifford-Lee.
You can get in touch on Twitter, our hashtag TonightVMTV, but first, here's Michael Ryan with the news.
Thanks, Carl. Good evening. The government's unveiled its long-awaited plan to tackle the threat of climate change. The approach will see ambitious measures that will affect all our lives over the coming decades. Within the plan, by 2025, new oil and gas boilers will be banned in a move towards better energy efficiency. By 2030, new petrol and diesel vehicles will be outlawed, fully replaced by electric cars. And 2050 is the target date to have zero carbon emissions. 4 men have been arrested by Gardaí probing a suspected murder bid in Dublin. It happened in Mulhuddart on March the 6th when a man who was sitting in a van at traffic lights was approached by a lone gunman who shot him in the neck and upper body a number of times. The incident happened in broad daylight. The victim survived the attack but has been left seriously injured. The jury in the Anna Creagel murder trial is set to resume its deliberations in the morning. Jury members have been sent home for the night. They've now been considering their verdict since the middle of last week. The 2 accused teenage boys deny the schoolgirl's murder. 14-year-old Anna was found dead at an abandoned house in the Lucan area of Dublin last year. A strike by 10,000 HSC support staff is set to go ahead on Thursday after talks broke down tonight. Unions have warned the dispute will have serious consequences for patient services. The dispute is over pay and conditions arising from a job evaluation scheme. And a solicitor for terminally ill Limerick woman Ruth Morrissey, who was awarded over €2 million last month, says his client is upset over a state move to appeal a court ruling in her case. Cian O'Carroll says the mother of one who has cervical cancer has suffered enough and would like some finality. The State Claims Agency says its appeal will focus on a number of important legal points, but doesn't relate to the decision to award Mrs Morrissey and her husband €2.1 million. Now, those are the late news headlines. It's back to you, Matt and Carl.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Now, the Minister for Housing, Owen Murphy, has indicated that people who refuse 2 offers of social housing are set to be struck off the waiting list for 5 years in a measure to be introduced shortly. I'm joined by Fergus O'Dowd from Fine Gael. That is the message coming from your party. Do you think this is the right approach?
Well, I think it's a very difficult decision to make, and I would prefer if people were offered a house in the area of their choice that they opt into, that they would take that house. It's an extreme, obviously, position. I understand that something like 3,500 people since 2016 have refused homes in the country.
And 5,500.
350 people have been taken off the list as such for 1 year. I would prefer to concentrate on building the homes and give that 100% of my time. But clearly people, if they are offered a house in an area of their choice, I believe they should take it unless they're really...
But hang on, isn't this a rather cynical stunt by Owen Murphy to, at a time when you had effectively admitted you're not building enough social houses, to create the issue that, well, the ones that we do have, there are people turning them down because they want to go somewhere nicer?
I don't agree. I think, from my experience, is people in County Louth take the houses they are offered. Now, it's different perhaps in a city because areas are actually bigger. And if you're going to Ballsgrove or Phineas Park and Drogheda, it's a small area. But if you're offered a huge area in Dublin that would say Finglas or whatever, there might be issues there I wouldn't know about. But I do believe that if you are offered a house, you should take it if at all possible. And if you don't, perhaps the local authority should interview the person and find out what are the actual reasons they didn't. And if they can be addressed, it may be a family member near them that they don't get on with.
But we hear about all sorts of wild excuses.
There are reasons.
It doesn't have the view they want, you can't put a trampoline in the yard. Eamon, Leo Varadkar says that he doesn't believe anyone could do a better job than Owen Murphy. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't agree with it, no. And this particular statement he's made raises more questions than it answers.
Why do you think he made it?
I think it's probably a signal to hardcore Fine Gael voters that if they're are people trying to game the system out there, and poor people in need of social housing are trying to game the system. Somehow we won't stand for it, and we'll crack down on it. I think it's dog whistle politics, and
Fergus is shaking his head no. Everyone else is shaking their head.
It's fairly well. It's pretty.
Well, I think you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong.
If you let me finish, you can tell us what you think. I mean, I basically, the suggestion, the implication is that there are a lot of people in need of social housing out there who are gaming the system, who are being choosy, who are actually spoiled. I don't think that's true. And I don't think he thinks that's true. I think he's sending a signal to the hardcore Fine Gael voter, his base, if we were talking about Donald Trump, that we're not putting up with these poor people who are too choosy.
I think that's appalling from you, Eamon. I think it's an absolute disgrace. You're saying that Fine Gael people, like myself and the people who elect me, don't care about everybody in society. Of course they do. We care a hell of a lot. We care a hell of a lot about it. Yes.
Let me ask you a question. A simple question.
I'll answer your question.
When people are gaming the system, when bankers are gaming the system,
of course,
when developers are gaming the system, when people,
or politicians, anybody,
when people who were involved in the various rackets. To do with mortgages, for example.
Yeah, of course,
when they were gaming the system, we didn't get hardline statements from the government, and they weren't banned from anything for 5 years.
The due process is law, and a lot of those people actually went to the courts, and it was the people on the juries decided that they weren't guilty. I would much prefer to see those people in jail, but you're wrong to say Fine Gael doesn't care about poorer people. You're wrong to say it doesn't care about people who suffer from disadvantage economically or socially, because we do. And I think you're wrong. And listen to
Lorraine, let's hear the other side.
Destroyed our economy and are responsible for the housing crisis in the first place.
Fianna Fáil never delivered housing shortage. Fianna Fáil never gave us housing shortage.
Hang on a second. I would agree with Eamon. This is typical Tory boy style politics, trying to divide communities. And what the Minister for Housing should be doing is concentrating on actually building more social housing, more affordable housing. We have a housing crisis, and instead of that, he's calling out to his base and trying to solidify his base. And I have the figures here. Can we just talk about the figures? Since 2016, only 370 applicants in the whole country have refused housing on more than one occasion. That's a very,
350 is the figure
370 is what I have. And Karl, you referred to these urban myths about people refusing them because they don't have a nice view or a trampoline. I've never come across that.
Sorry, they have been.
If you're a senator, you wouldn't be involved with it.
Maybe that's been once or twice, but the vast majority of people have refused housing because they have medical conditions. That's perhaps somebody in a wheelchair that has been offered a house with stairs.
It's the exception, it's not the norm.
You cannot marry these.
The norm.
And it's not. It's absolutely not the norm. And I'd like to refer back to a Goodbody stockbroker report that came out in recent days that says that housing is not being built at an affordable level, and that's the real problem. And there's a huge demand. I know what they said. I read the report. Actually,
you haven't read it.
I did read it.
The report says that more houses.
If you would let me finish making my point, Fergus, I think I know what I read. And what they said is that there's a certain portion of the housing that will be going empty because people can't afford to buy it.
That's correct. But what they said is that the builders are building houses outside the $250,000 band, and they're building them at prices that people can't afford.
People need affordable housing in this country. And for you to attack very vulnerable people in relation to their social housing needs, and it's completely disproportionate, and it's an extreme position.
I don't think Fergus actually personally attacked anyone.
How dare you say that?
How dare I say that?
How dare you say that I would attack vulnerable people? I stand up for
said your government
time
is
and time
attacking
again.
vulnerable.
My record is absolutely 100% on it.
Move from
Not
a
like
year
your
to
party
5 years. That's
that destroyed
Can I move away from this? What we started doing now is starting a political debate over something that the government, who are in government together, preside over at the moment. But what's the bottom line of this here is, which is interesting to me, is who are these people who are getting social housing? Because everybody, or anyone that I've known who is looking for social housing, have been told that they won't get a house for 7 to 10 years, possibly more. I don't know who is actually getting these houses, because most people are on the housing assistance payment, which takes them off the housing list, as we know, which is a very artificial way of pretending that we don't have people with social housing needs. But I mean, like, who are these people? And if you bring them off them for 5 years, well, what? They're going to be grandparents by the time that they go back on the housing list. No one is getting a social house. This isn't actually an issue. I mean, this is a minor distracting issue, and even making this a political fight is a distracting issue. People are not getting social housing, and it's affecting everybody. Everybody from the working class all the way way up as far as the middle class, which it doesn't affect. And let's be fair here, Fine Gael aren't known for fighting for the working class. While Fergus seems to have a different opinion here from what the housing minister. I understand that, but Fine Gael in general are not known for fighting for the working class.
That's not true.
They're just not.
If that's the case,
that's not true, because we have, for instance, in the last 3 budgets, in relation to people,
we've 10,000 people in hotels.
I'm not talking about social welfare increases.
Why is the minister talking about
We've done that. You're the person that took money away from the people.
It's only 370.
You're the people who destroyed our economy. Lorraine, you have no credibility.
Why doesn't he concentrate on building affordable housing?
But
let's get Gino in.
Gino, can I ask you something before you jump in there? I know that there's about 5,000 homes in Dublin across the local authorities where one person is living in a 2, 3 and 4 bedroom home on their own, while at the same time you've got instances around Dublin City Council where you've got 2-bed homes with 5 or more people in them, and there's 700 of those. You've got 1-bed units where there's 6 cases of more than 6 people living in a 1-bed. Yeah. Why can we not, if it's state-owned housing, look at swapping people around within that system?
Well, it does happen with mutual transfers and all that.
But those mutual transfers are only by choice. Do you think the state needs to aggressively manage this better, which includes getting people out of homelessness, to really take a stance?
Well, it shouldn't be compulsory by any means. But largely, the kind of what Eamon Murphy has been saying has largely been deflective of the real issue. Because people, my time as a councillor, the vast majority of people do not turn down housing, right? There's a very nuanced reason why people will turn down a house for educational, the school might be nearby, work, transport and all that. So it's very, very nuanced. So it's largely deflective of the real reason why we have a housing crisis.
But sorry, Gino, people will argue that people who buy their own houses often have to live many miles away from where they grew up themselves. Yeah. They're not able to go to the same school, near the same school that maybe they went to send their children to. They actually have to go and move many miles away.
All of those in renting have to do that.
The implication of what you're saying is, sorry, Gino, is this, that there's a cohort of people out there having a significant effect in our society who won't accept homes because it's inconvenient. This is simply not true. You're running. Why is Murphy, the minister, who's an abject failure, why is he issuing that statement? Can you tell me that?
But he did in February, and it's up again now for some reason.
No, I know, but so why would he be? And you're asking a question. Why should somebody who's lived in a house and with their family, now they're alone, and they've got 3 bed, why do you want to move them out? Are you Orwellian? Are you mad?
Orwellian? Because I care about the families where there's 6 people stuck in 1 bed.
Hold on a minute.
These are state-owned homes.
Are you off your tribe?
I don't know how you can defend that.
That's so right-wing.
Unbelievable.
It's totalitarian.
It's not totalitarian.
What, you're going to move me out of my house where I live alone?
It's owned by the state.
It's not unimaginable it's totalitarian, Karl.
It's totalitarian. My wife has died. My children have moved on. Now I'm in the house. It's 3 bedrooms. I'm on my own. And you're going to move me out and move a family in?
But sorry, Eamon, Dermot Bannon was on this programme recently saying the model that they have in Sweden is that they build social housing together, apartments, 1 up as far as 6 bed. But people, as their families grows bigger, they move to the bigger ones. But as the family moves out, they move back down into the smaller accommodation.
That's the nail in the head. They build social housing.
Oh, I agree.
And if this government was building appropriate social housing, I'm sure a lot of people in the situation that Eamon outlined would actually take up a 1 or a 2 bedroom apartment if it was within their own local community. You can't have somebody that's living alone who perhaps needs that support of the community and their doctor and their church or whatever else they need.
But is the priority built not
to have them there? Don't want to be surrounded by people they don't know. They want to be with their friends in their shops that they go to, where they go for
not when you're on the housing list for 15 years. Sorry, no, Fergus, you're happy enough to cut across people. Not when you're on the housing list for 15 years. You're not going to turn down a house finally.
I'm talking about people who are in a home that's too big for their present needs physically, but they want to stay in their community. I'm saying that's a good thing, that they should be able to stay. That's what I'm saying.
But Fergus, your government regularly throws out these kind of red herrings that there's a huge glut of people.
And it doesn't suit your narrative and Fianna Fáil.
Well, the narrative that you established.
One voice at a time.
Sorry, Fergus, if you let Lorraine make a point, because you've had a good run.
The red herring that this Fine Gael government throws out is that, again, that there's a huge glut of people living in mansions on their own, and
that's
the figures don't bear that out. But there is a proportion of people that are living in inappropriate housing, and let's build the social housing and let them move to something smaller and more manageable.
If they don't want to, Eamon will tell you you're totalitarian.
No, hold on a minute. You can't cherry pick.
You hurt him with that jibe, Eamon.
You can't. Well, I think he has tendencies.
I think he loves it, though.
You can't cherry pick the Swedish system. I mean, if we have the whole Swedish system, yeah, we take that holistic view, great, but we don't.
10-year waiting lists in Sweden.
You can't.
Black markets to beat the band.
Cherry pick, and you can't take people out of their homes.
No.
And the state cannot even begin to think about doing that. So don't give them ideas.
There is
they have
what
that
they can do is there is, if somebody's living on their own, they could take in, say, a student, and there's a tax-free allowance they can get for the income they might get for that. So it will be socially good for them if they have somebody that they want to bring into their home that they're happy with. And
you can't do that with council
housing. I want to bring Gino back in.
You can do that now.
But Gino, I want to bring Gino back in because, you know,
if they want
the government deserves a lot of criticism for the failure to provide social housing. But what about the local councils? I mean, the authority is often delegated to the local authorities, and they're doing damn all with it, aren't they?
No, I agree. I mean, I was a councillor in South Dublin County Council for 7 years, and over that period of time, public housing was a dirty word. And the reason why we have a crisis is because public housing has become a dirty word. I mean, I grew up in Neilstown, social housing. It was a huge success. Public housing in Ireland has been a huge success. But we've got a policy of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil in the last 15 years. Fergus, I'm not saying to you personally, but I know they did actually. They did. But the reason why we have a crisis in this kind of maelstrom is because of the lack of a will to build public housing.
I want to make a point about local authorities in Dublin. They refused from the National Housing Agency over almost 2,000 homes which were offered to them to put families into in the last few years. And the reason they refused is that they didn't want the increased mix of social housing applicants living in those communities. But in actual fact, the social housing applicants are living in those houses anyway, except that private landlords have bought them up.
Exactly.
And the local authorities turned them down.
Under the policy, Fine Gael is to privatise
this was a decision. This was a decision of, sorry, you might not hear this. This is a decision by county councils right around the country, and it's an absolute crime that happened. I've drawn attention to it many times, but the fact is that county councils turned down the homes that would house a lot of the homeless.
Gino, can I ask you, councils delivered 106% of the social housing delivery that was meant to be done in 2018. Okay. They were a key part of it in terms of building their voids programmes, acquisitions, approved housing bodies. So they were looking to get 25,469 homes. In 2018, 27,000 homes were delivered. How is that still a bad thing? Is there any metric by which anyone can ever be happy with housing?
No, I mean, you're looking at kind of the government is playing catch-up, okay? And this has been going on for, I say, we are in the epicentre of the housing crisis. Yes, they're acting now, but as I said, they are playing catch-up, and this crisis will continue. And will continue and continue until there's a definite policy change of public housing.
Because we should have higher property tax like they do in Sweden, and high property tax like in Austria, where some of that money goes towards public housing every year. Would you support that?
Well, this should be directly funded by the government. You know, we pay taxes, essentially, to fund all sorts of things, and public housing is, to me, is the key issue of tackling the housing crisis.
But they delivered more than they
Larissa, I want to bring Larissa in on this. Do you think what the public wants? Do they want their taxes to go to make public housing for what would be a relatively small number of people in the overall population?
Yes, they do, because it affects all of us. The problem with the fact that we've no social housing now, and I was interested in Fergus on this, because I can see that you're passionate and compassionate about it as a person, you know, removing you from your party. But what we're seeing now at the moment... No, but I'm talking about you as a person. I don't agree with you on your party being compassionate about it, but I'm just talking about you. But what I'm saying is, even when you're looking at it and you see, all you see being built are student accommodation, houses that will suit workers who can live on their own for 1,300 a month and
46
share the 42
rooms to share a kitchen.
But just hold on one second, I'm just going to finish what I'm saying, Fergus. But the point is, it's all to do with these, you know, to workers, the economy, corporatisation of housing, and it's kind of contemptuous of the family unit. And I think what's missing in this is, yes, Irish people do want social housing built.
Larissa,
because
there
it's
is a point.
family-centred.
Yeah, but there's a point I want to ask you about that. Is there not always a certain amount of jealousy of people who get social housing? That's, why do they get it? I want it. I deserve it. And there's an awful lot of people, actually, maybe who Fine Gael are trying to get votes from, who believe that somebody else is getting something that they're not getting.
Yes, I think that's a misconception, and I think that's something that that plays into people's mindsets a lot of the time. It's rankism. I'm deserving of this, and you're kind of the little people who aren't. But I grew up in social housing as well, and it's not for people forget. It's not for people on the dole. It's for people on low incomes to be able to afford housing. We need people. There are people on the radio today talking about being barbers earning under €30,000 a year. People who were chefs. We need these people in society. We need social housing. Not everyone wants to live in these areas. Not everyone wants to live in two up, two downs. They're for people who are happy enough to have that in their life and don't really have any other options to make any more money. I think Irish people really support social housing.
We built 18,000 houses last year.
No, you didn't.
We did.
There were 18,000 built. The state built a fraction of those.
Sorry,
so don't try and claim credit for those that were built by the private sector.
Well, then, paraphrase it a different way. 18,000 homes were built last year. Compare that to 2003, when the figure was 4,350. And the other point I want to make before you interrupt me again is that we're spending more money on housing now than we ever did before. 2.4 billion.
But you're
not building enough.
You're
not doing enough, Matt.
You're building about half. I actually have to ask you a question, because a lot of the viewers are saying, is there a vested interest in your part? Your day job is with Irish mortgage brokers. Does this mean that you're somebody who is against the idea of public housing because of the business that you're in, which is organising mortgages for people buying private housing?
I don't see how the two join up necessarily.
The whole market's linked and joined.
Yeah, but I don't get mortgages for people in social housing. So.
No, exactly. So if you want the new houses to be for private ownership, so there are mortgages on them rather than being for public ownership.
People are going to believe what they want to believe. Personally, I don't think that. I want to see more social housing, but I want to see it managed well. At the moment, a couple on 90,000 a year will pay 120 a week in a social house when they're bringing home 1,300 after tax. Okay, I think we're undercharging, and no one wants to have that conversation because everybody's
They won't be in the house. They can't be on the list.
You're making 1,300 a month.
They have to be less than 36,000 a year.
I grew up in a house where you paid social housing, and there isn't a whole lot of money left over.
You can't go on the list if you earn more than 36,000 a year.
You can get into it and then improve, and no one ever asks you to go beyond it.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there with that for the moment. And after the break, we'll also be hearing why Gino Kenny believes that when he was accused by Leo Varadkar of disrespecting families looking for medicinal cannabis.
I'm sorry, Deputy. The reply can't be any different to what 7 minutes ago.
Welcome back. The panel has stayed with us. Now, Taoiseach Leo Varadkar was branded disrespectful after responding, same reply, to a query on financial aid for a family spending €9,000 a year to get the treatment.
This is so important. I've been banging this drum for the last 3 years. I'm so frustrated. It doesn't compare to what the frustration what people families have. But is there a commencement date for the Cannabis Access Programme?
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Same reply.
Deputy Matty McGrath.
I'm sorry, Deputy. The reply can't be any different to what 7 minutes ago.
OK, Gino, people are saying that the Taoiseach was disrespectful to you, not just in the manner of his reply, but failing to stand up, as is the decorum inside in the joint. But is it really that I know it's a matter of deep personal interest to you, but is it really that significant?
Well, look, it's largely semantics. But the most important thing is that there is progress made on the Cannabis Access Programme, because this has probably captured the imagination of many people. But also, more importantly, is the families that are trying to access medicinal cannabis. Because at the moment, you have a ridiculous situation where people are granted licence, they leave the jurisdiction, and they can't get reimbursed for the medication. So the family from Waterford, the Stevens family, after 5 months of campaigning to get a licence, and then 5 months of trying to get the reimbursement, they were told that they can't get reimbursed. So,
and just to be clear, this is cannabis that's used for a specific medical reason for dealing with pain, is it?
Yeah, no, this is a family for epilepsy.
Epilepsy,
yeah.
OK.
So the 16 licences have been granted and 3 have only been reimbursed.
OK, but in this particular case, the Taoiseach had responded to questions from Micheál Martin, I think it was 7 or 8 minutes earlier.
No, 7 or 8 minutes, yeah.
So, would he have spoken to Micheál Martin that way?
No.
Would he have stood up for him?
Well, he did, and I have, I have a perfectly legitimate question, in relation to the lack of progress around the access programme, and plus about reimbursement. And now tomorrow I'll have the same time I have to at the promised legislation. So hopefully the Taoiseach will respect the issue and respect me.
OK, but you feel put out that he didn't stand, just that simple, basic respect. And his tone towards you as well.
Yeah, it was really...
What way did you feel about it? What was it, patronising or what?
Patronising. I'm just angry, Matt. You know, I'm just so angry that, you know, this situation has been allowed to go on and on and on, where people are actually, you know, on a daily basis, people, you know, are ringing me and saying, look, they can't get access to this medication.
Well, I saw it actually, and I felt disgusted. I mean, firstly, there is a family involved here in Waterford, so you know, it's not just disrespectful to Gino; it's hurtful to those people. They're having their big issue raised in Dáil Éireann. He's the Taoiseach of the country. Not to stand up for a deputy. The smirk on his face, and most of all, the dismissiveness.
But apparently, Fine Gael's line is the parliamentary procedure.
I don't care what Fine Gael's line is. The people, everyone has to make their own judgment, and everyone will speak on this. But I was disgusted. I felt it lacked empathy, and it smacked again of sending a signal. This doesn't matter. This is a guy who was sending love letters to Kylie Minogue in the Marion Hotel, you know, and and there is a link between that too, and also Gino is people before profit. He's a worker. He's representing workers. I know damn well what Varadkar was doing.
Which was what?
Being a posh boy.
Fergus?
Well, again, I think we live in different worlds where you talk like that, because, again, you're attacking our party once again. And
I'm not attacking the
No, but I think you're wrong.
For his disgusting behaviour. What did you think of his behaviour?
Well, can I tell what I think?
Tell us.
I think what he said was the same answer. What was the answer?
Why didn't you stand up?
Well, I wasn't there, but I want to know what the answer was, Gino. What is the answer that you got?
Well, like, get an answer.
No, but he said he gave you an answer.
No reply.
Got an answer.
What answer did he get?
But that's irrelevant.
No reply.
No, of course it's relevant, because... hold on a second.
What about the family? Can you not respect the family in Waterford?
I believe he would. His mother comes from Waterford. I've no doubt he would very much. I think the question was answered to your party, to your Stephen Donnelly, in February, the same question, and the answer I found on the internet says that he's had a lot of discussions, a lot of progress has been made.
That's irrelevant.
It is relevant, because it's why isn't the cannabis available? That's the question. And the answer the Minister gave, Matt, if I can finish this, please. The answer he gave was this, that he's in discussions with Denmark, with the UK and with Holland, because the difficulty is Holland will only export a dry form of the drug cannabis. It won't allow the export of the oils. There's only 2 other countries that do, and that the Minister is in discussions with them.
2.5
and he
years.
said he is hopeful, but he said it will take time. Can I just finish it? He says he is hopeful, but it will take time to get delivery of the product.
His response was,
that's what he said.
It's been worked on by the Minister, but I don't have an up-to-date position.
Lorraine, do you ever feel like a hypocrite having a go at Fine Gael when it's your own party is the one keeping them there?
Can I get back to the actual topic we're discussing?
I'm just saying, he wouldn't speak that way to me, Hall Martin.
I'll address that point in a minute, right? The fact of the matter is, it takes an awful lot for a family to come to a politician and to sit down and discuss their own private, personal health circumstances, and to entrust that upon a TD to go into the Dáil. And we have to remember what a TD means, a Teach the Dáil, a messenger of the people. Gino was a messenger of the people. He went in and the Taoiseach slapped him down in such an arrogant and ungracious and a high-handed fashion like that. It was completely wrong. And I actually heard Brendan O'Connor's interview with the Taoiseach at the weekend, and they referred back to this. And he actually, like, quite incredibly, said Gino was trying to make him look bad. And he
trying to
said,
get a social media.
Yeah, he was trying to go viral, and that's what the Taoiseach said about Gino, which is absolute nonsense. And if I could finish my point, in that interview, he kind of said, well, if you look over to Westminster and the way way they deal with it. Of course, he's looking over to his Tory partners across the water to see how they deal with it. We are different. We have a different parliament here, and he should have stood up and answered the question. And even if it was reading out the exact same answer he had given Micheál Martin 8 minutes before that, he should have given the respect to Gino and to that family. And I think it's an absolute disgrace that he behaved in such a fashion.
You're still keeping him in power. Larissa, what do you think?
Well, I think the manner, obviously, in which he replied was purposely showed contempt for Gino. That was the whole idea. And I think that was what angered you, not on behalf of yourself, but on behalf of, as you say, the family that you were there for. But it's an interesting one, because it's obviously not a minority group that Leo is particularly interested in standing up for, because if this was a more fashionable minority group, he'd be all over it. However, you know, if it's the sick or the old or the poor, Leo Varadkar doesn't seem to particularly care, and is happy enough to be contemptuous in those particular circumstances.
We see there's another issue here, Fergus, I think is very important, which we've learned about from the front page of the Sunday Business Post yesterday, which is confirmed. For all the talk about looking after the women who were affected by the cervical check scandal, and making sure that they wouldn't have to go through the courts like Vicky Phelan had to go through the courts. Ruth Morrissey went through the courts. She got her judgment. And what did we discover yesterday? The State Claims Agency is there taking an appeal to the courts. And for whatever about Simon Harris saying, oh, we don't want Ruth Morrissey to lose the money. What happens is if that judgment is modified or overturned, then it follows that there will be an issue with the money.
Well, I think the answer there is very clear what the government has to do. They have to make sure that that fund is given to her in whatever way it can be given, whether it's as an ex gratia payment or whatever way, but it must be done. She must get that money. There must be no issue about that.
Her husband and her solicitor weren't even told about this. The first they knew of it was when they read the front page of the Sunday Business Post and heard Simon Harris on television yesterday. That nobody had even had the manners to explain what was going on.
I find that unacceptable. Justice find it unacceptable that the Garda Commissioner and the Minister for Justice didn't contact that lady who was penalised for having a child many years ago. The personal contact should come first, and after that, the announcement.
Are you going to say that at your parliamentary party meeting? Are you going to get up in front of the ministers? Are you going to stand up and say that their behaviour was appalling?
Because I do say what I think, and that's what I think. And you're a teapot Tory, by the way. I just thought of that one. You're a teapot Tory.
A teapot Tory.
Your leader, Charlie Hoy, gave the silver teapot to Maggie Thatcher, if you remember correctly. So don't be talking about your Tory.
Fergus, I wasn't even born, I'd say, when that happened.
I'll tell you what. That's what Fianna Fáil.
Well, if you want to look that far into the past, off you go. I'm looking about the future. I'm looking into the future and serving the people of Ireland today. And if you want to throw an insult like that at me, no.
I think the key point here is that I am aware of the State Claims Agency in another case where a family who lost a family member under very difficult conditions, appalling, shameful, disgraceful conditions, that they haven't given the family closure. The key thing is to give closure to the wrong. And the judgment of the court gives that closure, and the money should be given to that family. It's not about money. It's about respecting them and respecting the process that gave it to them. And I think that we need to change the way we deal with families who suffer as
But do we need to have a change in the way that the government is reacting towards people? It's a gloss going off Leo Varadkar. We saw the opinion polls of the weekend, Eamon, assessing Fianna Fáil well ahead of Fine Gael now. The Greens coming up. But Leo Varadkar's personal ratings, which I think we also saw a signal of before the European local elections, are plummeting.
Yeah, I think that people are smart enough and tuned in enough. We're a small country. There's an intimacy about Ireland, and there's an intimacy about our relationship with public figures like Leo Varadkar. And when they're around for a while and you get a good look at them, I mean, that clip of Gino's is a good example. And also Varadkar and Simon Harris both gave the women afflicted with this terrible condition, this life-killing condition. They gave them assurances. You won't have to be dragged through the courts. Now it's happening. Assurances that were never lived up to. And I think people are, I think that opinion poll reflected a weariness with this crowd.
Larissa, is that a fair assessment of the Fine Gael, the leadership, the posh boys, as Eamon has called some of their leading lights?
Well, I think that, I mean, people are seeing through, there's a lot of distraction going on, isn't there? There's a lot of easy politics going on, you know, the socially liberal stuff that costs nobody any money, in fact, saves money most of the time. But all the hard stuff that actually costs money won't be done. So, you know, very economically conservative. And I think that everyone across the sphere, they're being affected by that. And they can see the social fabric is being ripped apart, and that families, you know, there's no functioning family situation there, or no fair situation for families. I think everybody's realising that, and they're suddenly going, okay, you know, this guy is lovely and glossy and he did all the right things, but he's not actually, he's quite hypocritical when it comes to actually doing stuff. I think people are seeing through that.
Gino, I'm just going to finish up with you. If you put yourself into the shoes of Leo Varadkar for a moment, and imagine you were him, and someone had asked you a question a few minutes before, I'd just like to hear how you would have responded to yourself in that situation.
In the same situation that happened on Wednesday? But Karl, what happened on Wednesday, I mean, each TD has 1 minute to say exactly what they want, okay? So I have a perfectly legitimate reason for that question.
But if you were Leo Varadkar, you would have answered differently.
Well, he should have given me an answer. You know, we're talking about, you know, the leader of the country. The leader of the country. And if there's anything to come out of this, if there's anything to come out of this, is that the Minister for Health will say this week when the commencement date of the cannabis access programme. And that's, to me, that's the most important thing, not my ego. Or,
all right. Look, we have to leave it there. We may come back to Leo Varadkar and his ratings in a moment, but we're also going to talk about the climate action plan which was announced by the government today. That's after this break. Welcome back. We'll just continue for a moment our discussion about Leo Varadkar and his falling ratings, because, Fergus, I think you wanted to respond to all these posh boy jibes that have been thrown around the place.
We're all born wherever we're born. Our parents are who they are. You can't blame a person because they're born into a middle-class household or a poor household either. The fact that they fight for what they believe in is what's important to me, and people elect them for what they are. To call somebody because they have a particular accent, they might be from Cork or Kerry or from Dublin 4 or Dublin 8. I don't care where they're from, as long as they do their job. And I'm interested not in the personal attacks, but on the facts. And the facts are, under Leo Varadkar, 2.4 million people are working today in Ireland. The unemployment rate has gone down to 4.4%. With all the people here attacking us, the truth of the matter is that the economy is booming, it's doing extremely well.
Why is Fine Gael failing to capitalise on that? Just like you failed to capitalise on keep the recovery going in the 2016 general election.
No, but the point I want to make is that the recent election, that we got 5 seats in the European Parliament, we're the biggest party across the local elections.
Much more relevant.
No, that's the European elections, and in the local elections, we have 37 councillors across
still the biggest
the 4.
Party in local
No, you're not actually.
We are the biggest party in local government.
So I'm talking about Dublin, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm talking about Dublin. I'm also saying that Fine Gael won 20 seats, the first incumbent government in many years to win seats in an election situation. I agree, things are not perfect. People are working. We've increased the minimum wage 5 times since we got into power. So to say that we don't care about low-paid workers is an absolute disgrace, and it's a lie. So I say people want to wake up to the facts, and the facts are this government are doing a very good job under extremely difficult conditions.
All your short is below the wall.
You say it, Senator, the way you're behaving.
Eamon can do the rebuttal.
Eamon agrees with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Political broadcaster.
He did the wagging of the finger at me there.
Okay, well, what? Thank you.
I
think it was a good one.
I think, you know, it's only one poll, but I think there's a distinct feeling that some of Mr. Varadkar and some of his ministers aren't up to the job, and that the heartlessness they've shown. And again, that was an iconic moment with Gino. It was a horrible moment, but it betrayed. It was very, very telling.
Larissa, would you think that Fine Gael will revive their fortunes by catching a green wave?
I think they're certainly making attempts at going at it now all of a sudden. I didn't really see anything much before. I'm sure Fergus will probably contradict me on that. But I certainly haven't seen Leo get so exercised about it. But then maybe he can add it to his other list of, a small number of things that he can care about that he can turn into, a money saver. No, I think, look at, there's despite I'm all for the green changes and all those kind of things. They sound wonderful. I just wonder, are they actually going to be done, or are we just going to be talking about them being done? I'm not sure whether they're actually going to be done, and at the expense of the big ones like housing and health. The housing is a balls. Health is too. We've messed all those things up. Should we be focusing on those things first of all before we go into the green?
We have to save the planet. Remember, hang on, come on. Where's your priorities?
We have to have somewhere to live though, and to feed people, and to not be working more than we ever were before and earning less. I think probably they're things that we should probably be coming to terms with first of all.
What do you think of the climate plan, Lorraine?
Well, what I think is that the public are now beginning to see that there is no substance behind Leo Varadkar. It's something we've been saying for a long time. They're obsessed with spin, and even today, the launch of the Climate Action Plan, it was all the ministers getting on a hybrid bus.
He's able to do it because Fianna Fáil keeps him in power.
Can I just say that last year the government bought 200 diesel buses and they bought 3 hybrid buses, and they picked one of them. They were all gone off. The look of horror actually on half the ministers' faces having to get on a Dublin bus was a sight to behold. But they'll do anything to get a photograph and hang their hat on a PR moment. And there is very little delivery from this government. And I welcome this plan. It's broadly in line with the Citizens' Assembly and the committee in relation to climate change. Let's see if they deliver on it. It's not costed. That's a very important aspect. You need to cost every plan. So let's see.
Where do you think the importance is? After what Larissa said, is this behind housing and health? I mean, should the climate action be something that is a lesser priority?
I think they should be in equal measure. I think the plan today is largely aspirational and it looks for more market solutions in relation to kind of what capitalism is actually doing to the environment, because we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is capitalism. Because that's what's driving the profit system to...
But Gino, isn't the reality actually, it's actually business.
And presently in China, they're polluting the plant or the atmosphere more than anybody else.
No, but isn't it true that the top 100 countries...
Isn't that true?
I know, hold on.
You're a Trotskyite then.
I am a Trotskyite. I'm a very proud Trotskyite.
Off to Mexico, off to Mexico.
No, but isn't it true that the top 100 companies are...
I'll have to get the pickaxe out.
No, you're a Trotskyite.
I'm a very
he's on the trot here all the time.
Yeah. Very proud trust.
Can I make a point here? A serious point about transport. 116 billion is the money in the 2040 plan by 2020. In Dublin itself, you have the metro expansion.
Look, I live in North County Dublin. Will it ever be done?
I didn't interrupt your cynical commentary on ministers getting on a bus. But what I am saying is that there will be 50 million people getting on the metro when it's built. We're building it.
Come out to Donabate train station with me and you'll see people who can't even get on to any of the carriages
but what you don't know, and here's news here,
because
you obviously haven't read it, that the DART expansion will be going through Malahide onto Drogheda. That's a 3 billion expansion.
We've been listening to this for years.
And she keeps interrupting. And the Bus Connect is also the other huge change that's coming in Dublin transport. Now, there's opposition to that, and I understand there are issues around that. But the fact is that this government is spending more money than ever before.
And you've already abandoned the Metro South Side line because a few little bit of opposition in your neck of the woods around Eamon.
It's been drawn. It's coming back to us with a redrawn boundary. But the fact is that if you take the Fianna, for instance, on the north side, we agreed that the green field should stay in the Fianna.
Eamon, what do you make of climate change?
And change the metro station.
Well, as important as housing?
Well, I think Gino's right. The two they're both very important. And we are not doing very well. We're second from the bottom.
But how many
of the European League
is equal to a human life? I mean,
that's the kind of...
How can they be equal?
Well, they are. You cannot sort of prioritise climate change in front of housing or housing in front of climate change. You've got to do both at the same time. Our government now, they say, Eamon Ryan says the key to this is transport. Who's the Minister for Transport? Shane Ross. Now, he's a national joke. So there you go. Another problem for the government, actually. He is a national joke.
Didn't you?
You can say that, but I can say
he should be managing Katie Taylor. But the point is,
I think that's unfair.
I think we all have to take climate change seriously, but it's an international problem, and Ireland has a very small place in that particular equation.
Do you mean, should we be dodging our responsibility, saying they're worse than other countries?
No, what we should be doing, Matt, is complying with our European Union requirements, and we're not. We're second from the bottom of that particular league, so let's get up the league first.
Lorraine, I think it would require a huge penal hit to Irish agriculture to comply with this rapidly. Would you be happy to oversee that?
The Irish agricultural sector is actually a very good sector. It's functioning very well, and they have lived up to the challenge. And I think that the farming unions have been very involved in the whole climate discussion. And I think that they have been very innovative to date, and I think they'll continue to innovate. And I don't think we should be attacking a large sector in our economy.
Pays.
Excuse me?
The idea is polluter pays, so whoever pollutes, they pay. So do you think farmers should be paying more?
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you. You can't respond to that. My apologies. The Irish Examiner front page focuses on the Climate Action Plan. The last throw of the dice is the very dramatic headline on top of a picture of flooding in Cork City from 2014.
And in the Times, we see that the climate plan will nudge people to do the right thing. They're looking to get almost a million electric vehicles on the road, no electric tractors. And the front page of the Irish Daily Mail focuses as well on all the things that are going to be banned, such as no new petrol or diesel cars after 2030, but also, very importantly, Longford Model, who sparked a furore on Love Island, is what some people will be going to first to read in the papers. That's all we have time for tonight. I'll be back on radio tomorrow and back here tomorrow night at 11 with Ivan, when we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the government's climate action plan, and we will have a panel of experts on the environment and climate change on that, and Michael Healy-Rae. Until then, thanks for watching and good night.